KJA Global Channel, The Political System and Me. Series 3, Institutions, Power, Rights, and Accountability. Episode 19, My Integrity and Civic Virtue. Rebuilding Trust After Rot. A nation does not heal the moment corruption is exposed. Exposure is only the first breath of truth. Healing begins when people decide, quietly, personally, and stubbornly, that rot will no longer be normal. When theft stops being admired as success. When bribes stop being excused as how life works. When public office stops being treated as a chance to eat. When honesty stops being mocked as naive. And when integrity becomes the new prestige. Corruption is not defeated only by laws. It is defeated when society changes what it honors, rewards, records, corrects, and refuses to excuse. Before this becomes an institutional question, it becomes a human experience. The clerk who refuses a hidden payment. The teacher who grades fairly despite pressure. The doctor who protects the patient instead of selling access. The journalist who verifies before publishing. The officer who records a complaint instead of protecting a connection. The citizen who returns what does not belong to them when nobody is watching. These acts appear small. But a nation is built from repeated acts that teach people what is normal. Trust is fragile. It takes years to build and minutes to destroy. Once a society has lived too long in corruption, trust disappears not only from politics, but from daily life. People stop trusting government, courts, police, elections, schools, contracts, news, and finally one another. When trust collapses, a nation becomes a collection of isolated survival units, not a society. The system reveal is integrity, norms, and enforcement. Integrity is the inner constitution of the person. Civic virtue is the moral skill of living together. In plain language, the hidden mechanism is integrity, norms, and enforcement. Integrity is not a decoration placed on top of a political system. Integrity is national infrastructure. Roads carry people. Electricity carries power. Institutions carry authority. Integrity carries trust. And trust is the currency on which laws, contracts, elections, courts, and public services operate. Nations heal through an integrity ladder. One honest record. One fair appointment. One conflict disclosed. One contract opened transparently. One complaint investigated without fear or favor. One sanction applied consistently. One institution admitting error and correcting it. Trust returns when people repeatedly see alignment between promise and practice. Integrity is not perfection. Integrity is alignment. Alignment between what we say and what we do. Between the duty we accept and the action we take. Between the law we publish and the rule we enforce. Between the mistake we make and the correction we owe. Corruption forces people to live divided. One face for survival and another for truth. One rule for the weak and another for the powerful. Integrity brings people back into wholeness. And wholeness is power, not the power to dominate, but the power not to be divided against yourself. That is why integrity is dangerous to tyrants and corrupt networks. It cannot be fully bought. It interrupts silence and denies corruption the ordinary cooperation it needs to survive. There are two kinds of integrity, and both are necessary. First, personal integrity. Personal integrity is the seed. It is the habit of telling the truth, keeping promises, refusing unjust advantage, admitting mistakes, and protecting the vulnerable even when recognition is absent. Second, institutional integrity. Institutional integrity is the soil. It is the design of rules, appointments, records, audits, protections, remedies, and consequences so that honesty is supported and abuse is difficult. Personal integrity without institutional integrity leaves honest people isolated, punished, or exhausted. Institutional integrity without personal integrity leaves procedures open to manipulation by clever criminals. Personal integrity gives institutions moral energy. Institutional integrity gives honest people protection and continuity. Civic virtue connects them. Civic virtue is not passive goodness. It is the learned capacity to live with others under shared rules without surrendering conscience. It includes fairness, restraint, courage, respect for evidence, protection of minority rights, acceptance of lawful defeat, and willingness to place public duty above immediate advantage. Professional ethics turn these values into specific duties. Doctors, teachers, engineers, journalists, judges, police officers, civil servants, soldiers, accountants, elected officials, and business leaders control different forms of power. Each profession, therefore, needs a clear code, a record of decisions, independent review, safe reporting, due process, and proportionate discipline. A code without enforcement is decoration. Enforcement without due process is intimidation. Due process without records is blindness. And records without protection can expose victims and witnesses. The analytical center of this episode is the accountability chain. Authority, duty, record, oversight, answer, correction, consequence. Authority asks who had the lawful power to decide, how that authority was obtained, and what limits applied. Duty asks what that person or institution was required and equipped to do. Record asks what evidence should exist: a minute, disclosure, vote, contract, audit trail, complaint file, or reasoned decision. Oversight asks who can independently examine the decision, conduct, and record. Answer asks who must explain what happened publicly and with evidence. Correction asks what can repair the failure: reversal, restitution, compensation, redesign, recusal, or restored rights. Consequence asks what follows when duty is violated: training, discipline, removal, civil liability, prosecution, or institutional reform. A broken outcome may begin far upstream. The visible harm may be a dishonest appointment, a hidden contract, a false report, an unsafe building, a missing medicine, an abused detainee, or a professional decision made for private gain. But the deeper failure may be unlawful authority, an unclear duty, an unfunded institution, a missing record, captured oversight, a ceremonial answer, or a consequence that never reaches the protected. The chain prevents us from reducing a system failure to one personality. It identifies where law, capacity, evidence, oversight, remedy, or enforcement stopped working. When citizens and professionals locate that break, criticism becomes more accurate and reform becomes more practical. For this episode, the principal mechanism is integrity, norms, and enforcement. The production graphic must make every link readable on a phone screen and label country-specific or proposed arrangements honestly. Under dictatorship, integrity is shaped by concentrated command. Information is restricted. Institutions answer upward. Professional ethics may be subordinated to political obedience. Records may be secret or falsified. Oversight may punish disloyalty rather than misconduct. And challenge may carry personal risk. In a fragile democracy, formal rules may exist while patronage, unequal capacity, corruption, politicization, and weak enforcement make protection inconsistent. Codes may be published, but ignored. Disclosures may be filed, but never checked. Whistleblowers may still face retaliation. Courts may issue decisions that are not enforced. In a functioning federal democracy, authority is constitutionally distributed, common rights remain enforceable, and more than one institution can question, review, or correct harmful power. But federal democracy does not automatically create integrity. Local power can be captured, oversight fragmented, and decentralization abused. The label alone proves nothing. Actual performance must be tested. The viewer should compare who decides, how authority was obtained, whether duties are clear, whether records are public, whether affected people participate, and whether sanctions and correction are available in practice. The democratic design must survive weak leaders, political disagreement, and changes of government. It must make integrity easier to practice, corruption harder to conceal, and correction possible without national collapse. The minimum guardrails are 1. Clear offenses and conflict of interest rules. 2. Transparent decisions, assets, contracts, and appointments. 3. Independent investigation and prosecution based on evidence and law, not factional revenge. 4. Whistleblower and witness protection, including safe reporting and protection from retaliation. 5. Consistent sanctions and institutional correction. These safeguards work as a system. A published rule without an independent reviewer can become theater. Oversight without records cannot see. Participation without safety can expose people. Sanctions without due process can become political weapons. And a remedy without enforcement does not repair the harm. An institution with integrity does not pretend never to fail. It detects failure, records it, explains it, corrects it, learns from it, and prevents repetition. Accountability also requires restraint. Not every allegation is evidence. Not every mistake is corruption. Not every disagreement is betrayal. Civic virtue distinguishes suspicion from proof, error from abuse, and lawful accountability from public humiliation. Global relevance. The institutional test applies across political labels. Who decides? What limits power? What information is public? Who participates? Who can report safely? Who reviews the record? And does a real correction or remedy exist? Myanmar relevance. Use ordinary lived experience only where it clarifies the mechanism. Avoid turning Myanmar into dramatic background or implying that one national experience fits every society. Here is the civic practice for this episode. See and ask. Ask what your society currently honors that it must stop honoring: cunning without responsibility, wealth without explanation, impunity disguised as strength, or loyalty that protects wrongdoing. Verify. Examine one professional code, disclosure rule, disciplinary process, or integrity standard. Identify who is covered, what duty is imposed, what record must exist, who investigates, what protection is available, and what remedy can be ordered. ACT. Choose one professional or civic integrity rule and define the record, oversight, and consequence needed to make it credible. Avoid accusing any person publicly without verified evidence, lawful process, and a safety assessment. Protect victims, witnesses, confidential records, family members, and digital security before taking any outward step. Review. Record whether you can name the responsible institution, the evidence, the safeguard or remedy, and one safe next step. The measure of success is not visibility, but whether responsibility can be identified accurately and action can be taken safely. Integrity is the bridge between freedom and stability. Civic virtue is the bridge between rights and responsibility. Trust is the bridge between citizens and the state. A nation is rebuilt when integrity becomes the heir again. When children see that honesty is not foolish. When workers see that merit is not useless. When citizens see that justice is not for sale. When leaders understand that public office is not private property. And when institutions prove that truth can produce correction. In the next chapter, we move from integrity to the stabilizer of democratic life. Unity across diversity. How a nation prevents polarization and builds common belonging. Because corruption fractures society, and civic virtue must also include the virtue of cohesion. The principle to carry forward is this: integrity is the inner constitution of the person. Civic virtue is the moral skill of living together. Ask yourself, what part of integrity and civic virtue should I now examine more truthfully, safely, and precisely? Freedom survives when responsibility becomes habit. Trust survives when integrity becomes practice. In the next episode, we continue with my unity in diversity. Belonging without domination. Continue the playlist, use the worksheet, and keep the practice safe, truthful, and disciplined. The system shapes our lives. Our participation shapes the system.
Subscribe.
Learn. Participate. Shape the future. KJA. Knowledge justifies authority.